Hi and welcome to Pick Up the Controller, a podcast under Pick Up the Mic Network, where we explore content creators, streamers, game developers, and more. We look into our favorite moments, learn more about the world of gaming, and discuss the importance of diversity in the world of gaming. We have a great guest for us today for this episode, but I'd rather let her introduce herself, and I think it's best to hear from you. So hi, Ash. Please, could you give us a brief intro about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ash. I go by Ash Said Hi on Twitch and on all social media. And I broadcast retro games, Nintendo games, and I love connecting with people through the joy of nostalgia. So that's the main focus of my content and what I love to do when I stream on Twitch.
Thank you. So just with an introductory question, what are some of the games that you love to play? As you said, you do enjoy retro gaming. And for myself, I've been able to play some of the old games on Sega Genesis or Nintendo 64. So what would you say is the games you really enjoy?
You know, you hit the nail on the head there. I really love playing games exactly like you listed. I actually participated this past December in a community-driven event called DOS-cember, where we focused on playing DOS PC games all month long.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really fun. But generally, I play like any kind of retro game. I sometimes stream from real hardware. So, like, sometimes I will hook up a Super Nintendo or like the GameCube, like you see sitting here on my desk, and we'll play various games. And I think that's the beauty of focusing on retro games or retro inspired games is that there's a wide library to choose from. So, you don't really have to pigeonhole yourself to focusing on one game. And I think that's important, especially for me, because as a content creator and having to go live consistently, it's easy for people to burn out and not feel excited about creating content because they have to focus on like the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
But with retro, I have 40 years of like video game history to focus on. And I also play games that maybe I missed out on growing up. So I grew up with like Super Nintendo and Nintendo consoles, and I never got a chance to play a lot of the Sega library. So sometimes I do what's called Sega Sunday and focus on like playing like Sega Master System or maybe like Dreamcast games or Sega Genesis games or in Europe, it's called Mega Drive. So yeah, like I do a lot of that stuff, but I also am a big fan of the Amiga 500. I play Amiga games every Saturday. And the reason why I focus on retro content like this is because the community is incredible. They love supporting one another. And I met a lot of my friends through broadcasting retro games. And also because I get to relive the best memories I had growing up. Like my mother and father, my mom still plays video games, right? She has like a PS5 and all that kind of stuff. Like she is a big Elden Ring fan, a big Soulsborne fan. And she's like, Ash, when are you going to get a PS5? I'm like, Ma, come on. Like, I don't have PS5 money. But anyway, she loves playing video games. And I inherited all of my dad's video game collection. So his Amiga 500, PlayStation 1, all that kind of stuff. And I get to retell the stories and connect with people through all of those fun memories that I have of playing video games with my family, cousins, and those kinds of things. And I think that's really important to share because content creation, a lot of times, is connecting with people on a human level. And being able to share all of those great memories with people helps them to connect with me as a person. And I get to share my authentic self. And I get to have fun, reliving all of those memories. So that's kind of why. But if I had to choose like a favorite, number one favorite game that I've recently played, I would say Morrowind, the Elder Scroll Morrowind is definitely a game that I love playing. It's like a big comfort game. So I would have to choose that one.
That is a very good one. And even myself, I've been going into retro games. So I've played a bit of Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 because Baldur's Gate 3 came out last year. And then just in the pre and the just getting ready for the game, I was like, let me check out Baldur's Gate 2 and 3 and the fact that they hold up pretty well. And even to your point, like I've been going back to the old Elder Scrolls game, and I think they've even said Bethesda might be doing like a complete rework of Morrowind to come out either this year or next year. So then I've been like getting involved in that as well. And one thing I have discovered is that if you go to like the early 2000 games, whether it be like a Solid Snake game or whether it be any of the games in the early 2000s or even in the 90s or even the 80s, that you kind of see how they have different flavors and they're made differently and they
Yeah.
work differently. And you
Yeah.
get to then see like, okay, this is how a 80s game would work. This is how a 90s game would work. This is what like an early 2000s game looks like. This is
Yeah.
how then you then start to kind of like see the mid 2000s when like multiplayer and then like LAN parties start to come into gaming. And then you then start to see like more of the multiplayer. And I think it's really nice because, as you said, video games have a long, rich history. And the fact
Yeah.
that you have time to then go through, and also there's so many games that have come out even this year that you sometimes just skip out. Not even talking about 48 years of history that just
Yeah.
weren't on your radar because you weren't born or just because you weren't into that type of genre. Because like even for myself, growing up, I was a big sports fan. So based in the UK, a big FIFA fan. So football, got into Madden, but it wasn't
Yeah.
until like playing, I think I played Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and I played that really late. So I played that in 2007, loved it.
Yeah.
Then played Star
Yeah.
Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, and then found out, oh my days, they also make a game called Dragon Age, which was coming out. So I played that. Then played Mass Effect 2 and then opened my mind to like RPGs. And then that's now the main focus for myself is playing RPGs.
Oh my God. So you see how it snowballs, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like everything that you listed there. Oh my God. Like, first of all, you said Metal Gear, right? And I recently did a very first time playthrough of the first Metal Gear last year. And I would even include that in my top 5 list of like
Mm,
games that I've played on stream ever. Because not only did I not know about the game and the story, and it was super exciting learning about the game and the story through that first time playthrough, but like chat was equally excited to see me play something that's a favorite to them and seeing their reactions to game moments that they grew up with that I
mm,
am now experiencing myself for the first time. Like, it's like people can live vicariously through those first time experiences, and it's really fun to watch. So I had a similar experience with the original Doom. Like, I first played that on stream and it was a really fun experience. And that's another big reason why I kind of focus on retro, is because, like you said, maybe people didn't get to experience some of these games because they weren't born yet, or they just simply didn't know. And I love helping people discover their new favorite game that they never knew existed, right? Like, that
yeah.
is so much fun to me. And I think Twitch is like a great place for that. And content creation is a great place for that. So I love that. I love that. I love that you brought that up too. And then St. Baldur's Gate, like I played Baldur's Gate 1 for the first time last year ever. And exactly as you said, I was like, wow, these games hold up so well. And I see why they make an impact and inspire games, today.
Mm,
That to me is like, and I think it's really also important to point out the history and preservation aspect of covering retro games, because it's super important to have these experiences documented, because when we design new games today, like, it's easier for people to maybe create 1 to 2 people, small teams that develop games today, and being able to have these games to be able to look back on and say, like, they can help us to decide how we create our games for the future, or maybe topics that need more coverage, or maybe things that didn't get covered should be covering today, right? Like, I feel
yeah.
like recently there's been an advent in being able to create avatars that look more representation of the people who play video games today, right? Like more Black characters in games, more like varied body sizes, like more women in games and things
Yeah.
like that, which is extremely important because like there was a time where we didn't see those reflections in the games that we're playing. And I think that having all of that be recorded and be able to share with people online is really important today and important for the future so that way we can inform the way that we create games in the future. So, yeah, I think it's important to play retro games and I love doing it.
Yeah, and like to your point, the fact you sometimes see like the progression of like the evolution of a genre. So like the
Yes.
major one that I was able to see is that you had Baldur's Gate, which came out, which was done by BioWare, and then
Mm,
BioWare took the lessons from that to then develop Mass Effect, which they did with EA. They used that to then develop Dragon Age Origins. They used that for Mass Effect 2, and then one of the big games changers that I actually got into that really got me into like the Elder Scrolls was Skyrim. And then that
yes.
was a huge game changer in games, being able to then see that mountain in the distance and then being able to go without any form of loading screen. You can go to that mountain, you can go to kill that giant, you could go to the College of Wizards, and the amount of variety, and then seeing that The Witcher 3 pick up from there and take it further. And
Yeah.
then I think that's what Baldur's Gate has now done, is taken what they've learned from the previous Baldur's Gate games, a bit of Dragon Age, a bit of Mass Effect, especially with the actual characters. You can kind of see the character development that BioWare's famous for, that they actually
Yeah.
took it in Baldur's Gate 3 and then have just run with it, that it's so many different options within one specific game. And the way that you can, as you said, you can play as many different races, you can play as different genders, you can play as many different ethnicities as well. You've got so many different, you can play as a cleric, you can play as any type of way that you want to. And I think that is the future of gaming, especially with the advances in technology, is that a person can actually see themselves within that game. And I think that's something that's amazing.
Absolutely. And exactly as you said, with the advances in technology, it's easier for people to get their ideas out there, which is really beautiful, right? Because then that means that ideas that may not have been as mainstream are able to be showcased. So, for example, I recently did a sponsored broadcast for a game called A Long Journey to an Uncertain End. And I thought the game was incredibly beautiful because it featured not only people of all races and all ethnicities and things like that, but you were able, when the game started, to decide your pronouns, and there
Mm.
were neo pronouns in there, and it featured characters like that were in like wheelchairs or just like had different walks of life. And I thought that that was so incredibly important, and all of the characters were written with such rich personalities. I thought it was such a cool thing to see in video games, and I really hope that that trend strengthens over time because we need that kind of representation in games. And the fact that indie studios are have the tools to be able to develop games and create things, experiences like that that allow people to be seen is so awesome to me. I love that. I love that. So I am very excited for the future of video games.
Definitely. And I think fans can see that within the different streams of entertainment, that video games is the place where you can actually see as much diversity as possible. And I think
Mm,
that's the tip. We're just hitting the tip of the iceberg. So like when
yeah.
you see films or you see dramas on television, whether it's American shows, British shows, we have a global audience, whether it's shows on Netflix, on Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, you sometimes don't see representation. But I think the one thing that you do see in games, which is starting to come in, is the diversity, being able to then see so many different things. And I think a key thing for myself and my brother, we're big Spider-Man fans, so we were able to play Spider-Man 2. So my brother played it, and I just watched him play it. And it's like one of the main characters was someone who was deaf, and she had a prominent part of the story. And like
Yeah.
that, and the missions that you did with her was so unique and something you'd not seen in a video game before. And I was like, yeah, this is amazing. I'd love to see more of things like this within video games.
Yeah. And then that's I love that. I love that you call that out. And then there are things that are as simple as like, when people play The Sims, right? Or maybe Grand Theft Auto, and they have like hair customizations
Mm,
that will make you feel like you can actually make a character that looks like you. Oftentimes, when I'm in a character creator in a video game, it is difficult for me to find hair textures that look and replicate what my hair looks like. And I know people in the streaming space that work very hard to have those options represented so that way people can see other walks of life that may not necessarily have another way of being exposed to those kinds of features. And I think that that is incredibly important. Like, I know some creators that work really hard on creating customizations for The Sims and games like that, so that way we can have a place to be represented. And I think that that's incredible.
it is, it is. And then just moving on with some of the questions that we've come up with. Um,
Yeah.
as you're a Twitch broadcaster, I think one of the key things is that what are the favorite games that you enjoy to stream? Because we have discussed that you do love to do retro games and
Yeah.
that you love to then show, like, for example, you said Metal Gear Solid, that being able to then get the nostalgia factor. And I think that's another element that I think Twitch and streaming retro games can enable. Are there any other games that you enjoy? And are there any special memorable moments that you've had with streaming specific games on Twitch?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, like Doom 1, for example, was really, really, really fun. I also love playing Zelda, like Zelda games,
Mm.
Mario games. Like I recently played Super Mario Wonder, and that was really, really fun. Oh my gosh. Like I know, like I said, I focus on retro games, but sometimes I do like modern Nintendo games as well. And I so I loved it because I thought the whimsy, I'm so sorry,
No, no, that's okay.
Bobby, she's getting antsy. I love the whimsy of the new Super Mario Wonder game because it's Mario, but there's a lot of unexpected elements. And the fun thing about doing games like that is even if you have a retro focus, right? There's audiences that are adjacent. So they might love retro games, but then they'll also appreciate things like, oh, you play Mario, you play Zelda, F-Zero, Animal Crossing, all that kind of stuff. So, I always tell people if they're streaming on Twitch, like, don't be afraid to experiment, even if you might see like numbers fluctuate, like, don't be afraid to experiment because your audience is there for you first and foremost. So those are always fun to do. And I love doing Morrowind. I had a lot of really fun experiences with. And oh, it's a big one too. I recently have been playing a game called Star Trek Final Unity. And Star Trek Final Unity is based on Star Trek The Next Generation. And the thing that I love about that game is that the entire cast from the show they do their voices in the game.
Mm.
And the reason why that was a fun experience was because my community, they love talking about Star Trek. They're big Star Trek fans. So we end up having fun conversations, really fun conversations about the show and like maybe what their favorite moments are or like the game because it's a point and click adventure game. So it's really fun trying to solve all of the puzzles together, but then all reminiscing about Star Trek and what all of their favorite episodes are and things like that. And being that there's like current Star Trek out, like there's always something new to talk about. So that was a really fun moment for me as well. And I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think what other games that I've had that. Oh, like there was another game that I played for December, called Commander. Commander Keen. That was really fun because I never played it before. So my community was telling me, "Oh, did you know that this is like the grandfather of the Doom guy?" And I was like, "What? I didn't even know that they were related. That's so cool." It's like, yeah, it's id Software. They also developed Doom. And I was like, I can't believe that someone out there made that canon. Like that's really awesome. So that's the thing that I love about streaming retro games is like if I don't know something, my community knows it, and then we learn there's like a back and forth there. So those are really fun moments for me is like that, like that community interaction and having those really, really great conversations.
And I think that's one of the things I do love about gaming is like the community aspect of it. Being able
Yeah.
to be like, oh, this boss has been terrible for me to fight, whether it be in Elden Ring or any other Souls-like game, or the fact that you've been able to find Easter eggs, and whether it's like Witcher 3, Baldur's Gate 3, in Cyberpunk 2077, and then being able to share that with your friends. And like even like growing up, as you said, Super Mario, Zelda, playing games, and then going to school to then talk to your friends like, oh, did you get this game? Did you understand this? Were you able to find this in this game? And I think for me, it's like community is a major part of gaming, and I think is one of the reasons why gaming is now becoming the biggest entertainment genre, I think, in the world right now. Because I
Yeah.
think one of the things that my brother told me, which I was surprised, that the most bought entertainment item, if I'm not saying, I don't think item's the right word, but the most bought entertainment in history is Grand Theft Auto 5.
Wow.
It's outsold every other form of entertainment, and I was like, wow. And he said, yeah, and he said it's not even close. And I think he
Wow.
said after that it's then one of the Call of Duty games, and I was like, wow. And he's like, yeah, that video games has now become mainstream, and also being able to then develop a community. And this links on to my next question.
Yeah.
Like, how are you able to balance like engaging with your audience and also maintaining a family friendly environment, especially focusing on diversity and also the unpredictable nature at times that streaming can have?
I think that's a really great question. I am very mindful about my presence on Twitch and on social media because everything is recorded and everything can be screenshot, everything can be, saved in some way.
Mm,
And it's extremely important to me to present myself in a professional manner, especially because this is the way that I build my income. And I want to have a sense of credibility, right? Like I want to make sure that if a company wants to work with me, that I'm brand safe and that they can trust that I will be someone that will be careful about how I present myself and how I represent their brand. So being family friendly also for the reasons that I listed, but also because people tell me that they watch my broadcast with their kids. I mean, it makes sense to me because my room is so bright, it's very colorful, I've got a lot of toys, and the games that I cover, they can be enjoyed by pretty much anybody. So those things are important to me. And I'm very mindful about how I present myself because of all of those reasons. And it's definitely not difficult because in my career, working as a professional and working in offices and things like that, like that's the standard for professionalism is, being respectful, being mindful, and things like that. So I think for anybody who's new, like, yes, it's a skill that you have to practice. But I think for me, it's something that I've been practicing for years. So it comes a little bit more naturally. But I think it is a skill that you have to practice. I think in this space, it is often confused that to be successful, you have to be edgy or you have to like, rage or you have to, kind of be over the top when it comes to profanity and things like that. And I don't think that that's true. And people might even say that it being family friendly or being, mindful about how you present yourself will place you in a box. And I think it's the complete opposite. I feel like your audience will grow because they know you're not going to hear like certain kind of things and certain kind of topics and things like that. And I think it also keeps me safe too, because I'm not putting myself in a position to set myself up for, certain conversations to be had in my space, especially as a woman, right? Like it can be very easy for people to come in and focus on how I look and how I present myself, but not focusing on those kinds of topics takes that out of the equation. And it's not right for everybody, right? There are definitely reasons to have other kinds of presentation in this space. There's definitely people who have found success in other ways, and I respect that. And it's amazing that we can have creators that can do any kind of content, but it's not right for me and it's not how I want to present myself. But I totally respect, that there's other paths to success. And the way that I also balance it is setting a standard and being the example that I want to see. So in my channel, I have moderators that moderators are also very key to the tone that you set in your channel, and there are rules. And setting those rules and being transparent about those rules and consistent about the way those rules are handled is extremely important to creating that balance. So I think those are some of the ways that I do it. Like I'm very clear with my moderators on what I expect and how I want the conversation to flow and what topics I will and will not allow. And explaining to people, like if they come in and maybe make a mistake or bring up things that might make me or like the other members of the community uncomfortable, explaining why it should be the standard is a certain way. It's very easy for me to say that in a respectful way. So those are the things that I keep top of mind whenever I broadcast or whenever I present myself on social media in any capacity. And it's worked. It's worked pretty well, So yeah.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. I think one of the things that I was been able to pick up early about social media is that it's basically a message board where you basically, and someone said it perfectly, it's basically a bulletin and someone going out to like the middle of the street or a mall or a shopping center or a major tourist attraction and shouting something at the top of their voice. And to your point, it's like with the social media era, you can't put something online or put something on social media or stream something and it not be copied. And I think that's another thing that people don't realize about social media is that it's once you upload it, even if you delete it or you try and remove it, someone screenshot it, someone has taken a picture of it, and then that can be used later on. And I think it's really important to what you said is that you should always be professional. And I think to also your point concerning like there are people who are streaming, whether it be streaming on YouTube or streaming on Twitch, who are a bit edgy. But I think, as you've mentioned, is like a lot of them have been able to then develop a following and then have become edgy, and that they have something that brings people to their channel, and then they're edgy, so then that brings more people. But I think also, I think people are starting to be turned off with it by it, especially just currently the way that the world is right now, that people want a safe space and being able to then sit down, have conversations with people who might be different to themselves, have different political views, might have different views whatsoever, but being able to come to a safe space. And I think that's a side of gaming that thankfully it seems like more and more work is being put into it, especially like online gaming. There's been discussions like in previous years and currently now about toxicity of online gaming and also sometimes streaming. But I think people are starting to see that, is this a safe environment? Are they identifying, oh, this is perfect. I'm able to then enjoy myself and not have to feel like I will be attacked in any way or be offended by any person. I think that's a key thing to streaming, and just in general, if it's a podcast, if it's streaming, if it's just you're a content creator, is being able to create a safe environment for those who are watching your show, watching your stream or your podcast. And I think, yeah, another key thing is having moderators is key, because you don't want to have to then be constantly reading through the different comments yourself, because then that distracts from the actual content that you're creating.
Exactly. Exactly. And, moderators are like, ugh, they're so helpful. I couldn't do what I do without them. But yeah, I think especially young people today are really great at recognizing some of the mistakes of the past, right? And we're in a space, we're in a time right now that is unique. Like, people before us didn't have like everything on record and didn't have access to be able to record at any time, at the drop of a hat. And I think that it's a gift and a curse, right? There's a lot of ways to abuse that, but then there's a lot of ways to highlight, like, hey, this kind of environment has grown and festered. What can we do to fix that? And gaming was a space like that, right? Like, how many stories have you heard where, maybe like a woman was in a lobby for a game, like something like Call of Duty, Overwatch, or something like that, to speak, because the people hear that that's a girl, like, it's like, oh, like, you don't know how to play, or like obscenities or targeted attacks or whatever. And I think that being able to like call that kind of behavior out on social media has now created a conversation where we can try to figure out like ways to make it more open, make these things, oh, like, we're aware of them happening, and now how do we make sure that they don't happen anymore? And I think that that is really important, which is another reason why I'm excited about the future of gaming. So yeah, I think that online social media is our digital tattoo, and I live by that. Like, I live by the fact that people can always go back and see the things that I did, and that's why I think it's really important to be the example that you want to see out in the world. So yeah, I want to continue to use the tools to empower people and inspire people to make the gaming space the best that it can be.
Yeah, yeah. And moving on to the next question, which is looking at inspirations. So what would you say it could be, for example, a streamer or a gaming event that you've had that was so inspirational for you in the last few years when you've been on Twitch?
Oh man, there's a couple that I can think of. Okay, so before Twitch, one event that I went to that was super aspirational was to E3 twice in my life.
Wow.
And it was one of the best events I ever went to. And it was cool to see people covering games, and the video games were a viable way to create a career. Now, of course, there's the conversation going on right now about like all the game industry jobs, like, all of that stuff, like people getting cut from game industry jobs. And I think it's really important to continue that conversation. But seeing, professionals like that work at Nintendo or Microsoft or Sony, and seeing women in those spaces, and, seeing the potential of what you can do, and realizing that there's so many different jobs in video games, right? Like, you can be an artist, you can be a graphic designer, you can be a programmer, you can be an IT person, you can be a PR person, a marketing person. And there's so many different facets to the gaming space. That was really inspirational to me. And I loved being in that space because E3 always felt like Christmas. It felt like our gamer
Yeah.
Christmas, because we were getting all of the news and seeing what was coming up for the upcoming year. And it was a time when there was a lot of buzz and just excitement for what was coming up. So that was an inspirational event. And then I feel like while I've been streaming, going to TwitchCon was always super aspirational and inspirational to me too, because I get to see my creator, like, I don't want to say coworkers, like that's not the right term, but maybe just like, colleagues in this space doing incredible things. And whether that was hosting on stage or coming up with new ideas for their streams or having panels about things that they've learned through their content creation journey and sharing that information and inspiring other creators, that is super cool to see. And it really helps inspire and direct some of your energy coming out of that show. So I think that was an important show to go to as a creator, because it can help you, maybe figure out where you want to go, what you want to do, what you want your journey to be like or feel like. And I always think back to those industry events whenever I'm trying to figure out, like, well, where do I want my journey to go? What do I want to do? What do I want to see? And it has helped me a lot, because for a show like TwitchCon, for example, last year I pitched a panel and it was approved. And then I was also a host for other panels. And having people come up to you afterwards and being like, oh my God, I didn't know this information, or you've now inspired me to do X, Y, and Z thing for my stream, is incredibly empowering and super awesome. Like, to know that you can have an impact on someone else's content creator journey. So I just love moments like that. And I think back to those things a lot.
And to just on your first point, I think one thing that people have all realized is the amount of jobs, as you said, that the gaming industry can create. You have writers, you've got script writers, you've got people in the tech industry. And one of the jobs I did see, someone was just talking about the work they were doing. It was for Final Fantasy 15. And I think he was called an environmental artist. So they would send him all over the world to take pictures of areas that they would then put in the game. And I was like, oh my days, that is an amazing job to go to different parts of Europe, go to different parts of Latin America, going to all over the world to take pictures and enjoy the scenery, and then being able to then bring that into video games. And I think that's one of the things that's really nice about video games, is that as it's starting to emerge and become more and more mainstream, there are a lot more jobs. And I think another thing that you mentioned with TwitchCon, it kind of reminded me of like the different events that I've gone with work, where you've been able to just sit down with industry colleagues and then just learn from them. And then you're able to then take away from it and say that, oh, I'm going to do something differently because I've been able to learn from this person that this is how they've been able to achieve this success or been able to overcome this hurdle, and then learning from it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important, like events like TwitchCon, because you're able to then further collaborate, being able to then learn from each other, and then also like create further opportunities. Because I think at times when you're doing something or developing something, whether it's content creation or it's a podcast, at times you feel like you're doing it all by yourself in a silo. But then when you're able to then go to these events, you're able to then see, oh, okay, so the way I've felt, other people have felt that. They felt the dismay when things haven't gone the way that they wanted to. They've had the same hurdles as I have. And then being able to say, you know what, this person's been able to then go jump over their hurdles and been able to succeed. And now I know that I can also do it as well. And I think that's the main real nice things about these events, is not just a collaboration, but also the lessons learned and learning lessons from each other.
Yeah, I love, love, love that you called out collaboration. Absolutely 100%, because it is the perfect place. Like, I feel like when you meet people in real life and you get a sense of who they are and how they carry themselves and their work ethic and things like that, meeting other creators at events like that totally heightens the ability to be able to collaborate with people, because then you kind of know, like, you get that FaceTime with them and it's like, oh, you did this. Like, I've seen that before. Okay. Like, and then you can have a place to jumpstart that conversation. And earlier, when you were saying like the different jobs, like writing and all that stuff, like it then sparked like, oh yeah, you know what? Like, I remember seeing, like, for example, jobs at Nintendo, like they were looking for chemists, right? Like, to be able to test like the materials that go into some of the products that they create, right? Like, there are all kinds of really interesting jobs that people don't think about, like lawyers, for example, when you're doing like IP, right? And like protecting their IP and things like that, or like people who create products. Like, there's so many different things. So like, I really hope that anybody that watches this, or like is thinking about what can I do in the video game industry, like there's so many different options. And yeah, it's either like you can go into maybe like a more specialized field, or you could do like content creation and then like do like collaborations and things like that that we're talking about. So there's so many opportunities. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I think it's really amazing that this genre, the video gaming industry, has been able to then create so many different jobs. And to your point, it's like people sometimes forget the tech side or even the lawyer side. Like a lot
Mhm.
of people did see like the lawyer aspect of it, especially with Microsoft trying to buy and now have fully bought Activision, Blizzard King as well. I think it's just the fact that there is like a legal side, there's a financial side, there's a tech side, there's
Mhm.
a promotion side as well, and you just think to yourself,
HR,
yeah,
yeah, like all that stuff. Yeah. All of that stuff exists in the gaming industry. So, yeah.
and just looking at the time as we're heading towards the close, I have one more question for you. What are the
Sure.
games you'll be interested in, retro games or even new games that are coming out this year that you're planning to get stuck into in this year?
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. I mean, recently I've been playing through Tears of the Kingdom, right? Like, I know it came out last year in May, but I'm still playing through it. I have not played Baldur's Gate 3 yet. I really want to play
Mm.
Baldur's Gate 3 for sure. And oh my gosh, I don't know. I'm like really conflicted because I feel like this year Nintendo could come out with, like, they could announce like a new console or something like that. So I feel like on the Nintendo forefront, it's like up in the air. I don't know yet. There could be a lot of potential out there for whatever they've got cooking. So I don't know. Like, I guess I'm the kind of person that I love learning about stuff in the moment, like seeing a Nintendo Direct and then being like, oh my God, I need that game. So I'm really, well, but definitely for the soon to be future, I really want to play Baldur's Gate 3, because I mean, it won Game of the Year, right? The Video Game Awards. So now it's like I've got to play it.
It is an amazing game. I've played it. I think I'm on my fourth playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3. It is an amazing game. The amount of different choices, um, amount of different things I've gone through as well. And I think it's just wonderful that the game enables you to have so many different choices, so many different levels of design. And I
Yeah.
think I just love the game because like I've been playing it for like the last 3 months, and I'll probably play it for another 3-4 months because it is that type of game. It's that special.
Nice. And you could probably do like different character playthroughs and stuff like that, and like have different outcomes. And well, see what if I answer this question differently, or like what if I pick this build or whatever. So yeah, I could definitely see why people play it multiple times over.
Yeah, and I think one thing I do love is that they pinpoint whether it's the person's race or whether they're a dwarf or whether they're a human, half elf, elf, a gnome. It actually develops into the story, and even the class and also the subclass develops into the story. Like, for example, if someone's a warlock, they'll have a specific statement that they'll say. If someone's a fighter, they'll have a specific action. And then even the fact that if you're if there's a faction that you're an actual part of, you can actually break up a fight that's about to happen just because you either worship the same god as that person, you're a part of that faction, you have knowledge of that faction, and it's just amazing different ways that you're able to then find solutions to the problems throughout the game.
Nice. I love that. I'm excited for it. I'm excited. Yeah. You got me hyped up for it now.
And I just watched like a video on IGN, and they said like predictors have said for like on the Nintendo front that yes, that most likely it will be coming out. They'll announce something earlier this year and potentially around the holiday period. They said that the Nintendo really doves to have like the whole holiday period, so like Black Friday from probably from Thanksgiving up until Christmas. And people are like, if it does come out this year, the next stage of the Switch or a brand new console altogether, are they going to do another 3D Super Mario game? And I think that's what fans are thinking, that should I save on my Nintendo purchases and wait for later on this year so then I can buy straight away games for the new Nintendo console and then play that over Christmas and into the new year?
Right. Good question. Good question. I think like now people should probably start saving their dollars, their pennies, they should start saving now because I feel like something's coming. Oh, well, you know what I just remembered too? I remembered there's a Princess Peach game coming out, I believe, in the next few months that they had announced during a Nintendo Direct last year. And that game, I definitely can't wait to get my hands on, because I got Super Mario RPG and that game was really awesome. I loved it, especially because I played the original growing up. And to see all of the, full updates was just like, oh my God, it was awesome. So yeah, that Princess Peach game, definitely, I really want to play.
And thank you, Ashel. And just all things must come to an end. And sad that this episode has to come to an end, because this has been an amazing episode, learning about yourself, your retro gaming, the games you enjoy. And also, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to yourself, Ash, for coming onto this episode, the amount of stuff that the audience is able to learn from you and also from your journey. And also, I'd like to thank you, the audience, for coming to another episode. And if you like this episode, please leave a like and subscribe to us as well. We really appreciate that. And if you want to know when our next episode's coming out, please click on the notification bell so then you won't miss another episode coming from us. And finally, if you're really interested in receiving some perks as well, you could support us, whether checking out our page on Patreon or potentially subscribing to Pick Up the Mic on YouTube. I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Ash for coming on for today and having this wonderful discussion with myself.
Oh my gosh, thank you. It was my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. And thank you to everybody who listened in. I really appreciate you all. And I'm excited for you all to be inspired in game or content creation journey.
Thank you all. See ya.